So I decided to address the issue of Black Lives Matter. It seems to have become such a point of controversy where people are arguing for or against the entitlement to such a statement and what it really means, depending which side of the argument you're on. And I've been thinking for some time since all this kicked off whether I should say something, and I feel I can't not. This isn't actually a new argument. We get to it every time some incident happens. Not so long ago, when there was the terrorist attack in Paris, and people started showing their solidarity with Paris and the people of France by changing their profile pictures and putting up the French flag. And there were those that were quite happy with that, and there were others that decided that it was inappropriate. Why should we show support for one group of people, in that case the French, as opposed to the people of Lebanon or Syria or Kurdistan or wherever? And this is a problem that's been going on for a very, very long time. So, is it acceptable to single out one group of people for favourable treatment? Some will say, yes, it's absolutely right, Black Lives Matter. And they will understand it in the sense as it is meant. Other people will see that and say, oh, well, black people aren't more important than white people. White lives matter. As if we really need to be able to make some sort of claim. And then there are other people which will simply say, well, at the end of the day, it's human lives that matter. Now, this is always a thing of rhetoric. It's not always about what's being said. It's what's really being implied by it and what people understand. Lots of words have sort of changed over the years. Certain expressions which at one time were considered unfavourable are suddenly regarded as a positive. Other things the other way around. Just 100 years ago, to use the term gay would simply mean you were in a good mood. You were bright and cheerful and whatever. Now, although it hasn't exactly technically disappeared, if you use the word gay, people would understand that you were homosexual. And this is a similar sort of thing with regards to implied discrimination. And I'm sure not everybody that tries to balance up the statements is implying that any one group is less valued or less worthy of being treated in a fair and civil manner. But there are those as well, and this is where the problem is. When I studied nursing many years ago, we had a psychology teacher who used to say, the trouble with coded messages is that you require that everyone has the right key to unlock what's being said. And in these grey zones, that's where the danger is, because everybody will perceive it to mean something different. At the end of the day, we're all human. It doesn't matter where we come from, what we believe in or not, what our sexual orientation is, whether we like jazz or rap. At the end of the day, we're all human. We have the exact same biology. We have the exact same source. We all come from the very same place. No one race is more important than the other. But when things happen, like has been happening, then that needs to be the specific thing we address. If I've got a splinter in my hand and a roaring toothache, it's the roaring toothache that I'm going to be dealing with. That will be the priority. If you're in a situation where there's been some sort of emergency, a car crash or something like that, according to the Manchester triage, you look at the people that are in the most dangerous situation, the most life-threatening situation, and that is the thing you deal first. You have to prioritize. That's not to say the lives of the other person or the injuries aren't to be taken seriously, but you have to take into consideration the priorities. And people just don't seem to be able to get their heads around that. Rather than think about it, they make some great political or racial statement about it. How do you compare the plight of different people? And how do you compare the plight of a group of people with whom you have maybe no contact to the individual plight of your own family? COVID is still going on. People are getting very tense, and people are losing loved ones, family members, colleagues, friends. Now, does that mean that because of the issues going on somewhere else in the world with people that you're probably never going to meet, does that mean that you should ignore it? You should either ignore your own personal thing or you should ignore what's going on there? No. These things don't have to be an either or. And people seem to be very particular about what they choose to be relevant or not. It's fair enough. But I think the biggest problem here is this comparative. How do you compare a parent that's just lost a child to the plight of somebody else with a degenerative condition? How do you compare that to some child that's being bullied at school, or people that are being killed and persecuted in certain countries because of their religious or religious beliefs or sexual orientation? At the end of the day, we are all human. At the end of the day, each and every person is just as valuable. At the end of the day, everybody should be treated with respect and should treat others with respect. Of course, that's very idealistic. We know very well that we're all going to have our particular favourite. But you can still like one thing without hating the other. Mark Twain said, "Comparison is the death of joy." He may have a point. It's certainly the death of reason, because you can always use it to negate something, and this is the problem. Not everything has to be comparative. take whatever situation it is that you have in life, and there's always going to be somebody that's richer than you, and there's going to be somebody that's poorer than you. There's going to be somebody older than you and somebody that's younger than you. There's going to be somebody that weighs more than you and somebody that weighs less than you. The position you find yourself in life is going to be relative on so many different. So why do we need to compare like that? It's worth bearing in mind. If we're getting upset because our cup of tea wasn't served at the right temperature, it's hardly the equivalent of somebody that has to walk 15 miles to get clean water. It's worth bearing in mind. But to the same extent, it doesn't mean to say that whatever you come up with, somebody says, oh, well, oh, you lost your wife. Well, how long were you married? Oh, I was married twice as long to my wife. So my pain is so much more than yours. Why should things like that be comparative? But there are people with an itinerary. There are people with a reason to want to create this division. And that is a problem. And people don't seem to be looking at it like this. When I was younger, I had a not such a pleasant childhood. And back then I was a fairly nice guy. Fairly naive. Hopeful. Optimistic. I was just nice. And I wanted to give people the benefit of the doubt. So when people reacted in a negative way towards me, I did everything I could to accommodate them. I turned the other cheek, sometimes literally. And after a while, over the years, I realized I was always getting the short end of the stick. And eventually I had enough. And eventually I realized that if I grabbed somebody by the scruff of their neck, looked at them square in the eye, raised my fist and let them know what would happen if they didn't pack it up, people came to listen. I hate it. I hate it that it got to that point. But the thing is, I'd got to the point where I'd had enough. I'd got to the point where I said no more. Now, I'm not quite sure how many years it was it took me to get to that point. I was maybe about 30 or so, maybe a bit older. But the thing is, this is nothing compared to the legacy that certain groups have had to put up with this kind of treatment. The Afro-Americans, British of African descent, Jamaica, people of certain religious groups. It varies from time to time. Basically, people who are intolerant. There's a lot. Mankind isn't as bad as people think, but it's a lot worse than people think. And frankly, it makes me sick. It's despicable how people treat other people. It's despicable that we've got to this point, that we're constantly coming to this point and having to argue about whether somebody has an entitlement to be treated in a proper way and whether other people have the right to be able to make an issue about it. Yes, we do. We do have an issue. Everybody should have an issue. It's not right that people should be mistreated because they love people of the same gender. It is not right that the people need to be able... Why do people need to pigeonhole? Why do people think that's acceptable? All these issues about what specific gender somebody is, and if they're a certain kind of gender, what should be expected of them, and if they're a certain religious belief, what we should expect of them. Why can't we just meet people as people? Why can't we address injustice as injustice? I'm conscious this is going on a little. I'm going to bring it to a close. The point is, all lives matter. And it doesn't matter whether you divide it up or not. It remains the same. Yes, white lives matter. Yes, black lives matter. Yes, Chinese lives matter. Yes, Tibetan lives matter. Yes, the lives of the people in Venezuela matter. Yes, the lives of people all around the world matter. That is all.